Hello, everyone. Hello, and welcome back to our presentation, our Black History Nuggets, our 10-minute Black History Nuggets. For those who may not have uh, watched the previous episode, in the previous episode, we began talking about the beginning. Where did we come from? And so we looked at these Genesis chapter 2, and we looked at the different rivers to determine exactly where the Garden of Eden is. And we landed after looking at the river Pishon, the river Gihon, the river Hiddekel, which is the Tigris, as well as the river Euphrates. We realized that the Garden of Eden was most likely located in the area of the world that we today call Israel. The area that we today call Israel, which is on the area, which is in the part of the world that we today call the Middle East. And we're going to unpack the Middle East a little bit more in a moment. But this is where it is suggested that the Garden of Eden was located. And yesterday, we ended talking about, okay, maybe if this is where the Garden of Eden was located, is there any biblical reference? Is there any biblical reference? And I would say yes. First thing is we have to notice that that same area where the Garden of Eden is considered to have been located is in this area called Israel or Lebanon. Israel or Lebanon. So, why would that be important? It's important because if we go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 31, Ezekiel chapter 31, the Bible says, Ezekiel chapter 31 and verse 3. Ezekiel 31, verse 3, the Bible says, "Indeed, Assyria was a cedar in Lebanon, with fine branches that shaded the forest and of high stature, and its top was among the thick boughs. The waters made it grow, underground waters gave it height, with their rivers running around the place where it was planted, and sent out rivulets or rivers to all the trees of the field." Hmm, interesting. Therefore, its height was exalted above all the trees of the field. Its boughs were multiplied, and its branches became long because of the abundance of water as it sent them out. All the birds of the heavens made their nests in its boughs. Under its branches, all the beasts of the field brought forth their young, and in its shadow, all great nations made their home. Thus it was beautiful in greatness and in the length of its branches. Because its roots reached to abundant waters, the cedars in the garden of God could not hide it. The fir trees were not like its boughs, and the chestnut trees were not like its branches. No tree in the garden of God was like it in beauty. Hmm. Have mercy. Now remember, it's talking about Lebanon. We just noticed that it's talking about Lebanon, beginning of verse 3, right? Then it says, "I made it beautiful," verse 9, "with a multitude of branches, so that all the trees of Eden envied it that were in the garden of God." And so the Bible is literally making it clear that the Garden of Eden was in the place that we today call Lebanon. Back then, it was also called Lebanon. And all of this makes sense. All of this makes sense because if you think about it, that area was also the land of Canaan. That same area, the area that we today call Lebanon and Israel, that entire area was called Canaan. So think about it like this. When Adam and Eve sinned, they were in the Garden of Eden, right? As a result of their sin, God kicked them out of the garden. When the children of Israel were sent to the promised land, that land that they were sent to was the land of Canaan, which was basically the Garden of Eden renewed. Okay. And then that same area today, Israel, is that land, that same landmass that individuals are fighting over right now. And so here we have the Garden of Eden, which was in what we today call Lebanon. God sent the children of Israel right after he sent Adam and Eve out, some thousands of years later. He made the promised land that same exact area, which was Canaan. After that, he made that same area. Not he made that area, but that land, that same landmass called Israel, would be the area that they're fighting over right now. And so we know that the Garden of Eden was in the area that we today call Lebanon, and that whole entire area, Israel, that whole entire area was the area that God sent Abraham and all of his descendants, the promised land, later on in the biblical narrative. So what we see here is you have Egypt to the left. It says Egypt to the right, but that part on your right is actually what we today call the Sinai Peninsula, or this same area here that we see, which is the Sinai Peninsula or the Middle East. This area today is called the Middle East, when in actuality, back in the day, back during biblical times, it was not called the Middle East. In fact, the term Middle East is a newer term. It didn't come about until the 1850s. Around the 1850s is when it was given the name Middle East. What's interesting also is that the Suez Canal, a man-made canal, was also built around the 1850s, 1860s. And so if you are trying to distance a people from their original homeland, disconnect these people, then what is the best thing to do? Or the best thing to do is to build a canal to separate what we today call Africa with what is today called Middle East, and give it another name. So, because originally the quote unquote Middle East was a part of Africa. It was literally considered North Africa. So there was no, there was no Suez Canal. It wasn't broken off in pieces, any of that. That was done at a later date. So what happens? If you look at even the land of Israel, to what we today call Israel, is on the African tectonic plate. So it is literally, that area is literally a part of Africa. It is literally considered North Africa. Now, it is not called North Africa today because the people, the powers that be, want to separate, quote unquote, Africa from Canaan or from Israel, from that promised land. That's what they want to do. When in reality, all of it is the same landmass. All of it's the same landmass, which means that if there were people of color, if there were black people in, quote unquote, the rest of Africa, that would have to mean that there were, quote unquote, black people in North Africa as well. But they don't want us to know that. That's why they built the Suez Canal. That's why they built the Suez Canal and named that area the Middle East, because they want to disconnect the chosen people, the people of God, from the rest of Africa. So they don't want us to know that those individuals who occupied at one time that particular landmass, they don't want us to know that those people were people of color. They don't want us to know. And so for that reason, that's why they have, you know, done everything humanly possible to make sure that we don't know that the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan, now Israel, was initially a part of Africa. Part of Africa. So what do we learn? We learn that the Garden of Eden was in North Africa, the area that would be called the land of Canaan, the promised land. Also, it will be the land that today is called Lebanon, and that whole area is called Israel. So, why is this important? It's important because when you go to Genesis chapter 9, in verses 18 and 19, you see that after the flood, it says, now the sons of Noah who went out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated. So everybody on the earth was populated from one of these three sons. So You have the Garden of Eden. That's where everybody came from. In this same area, because we know that the flood happens and everybody was separated. And so Noah would have three sons. And so everybody on the earth right now is a product of one of these three sons. Okay? So chapter 10 and verse 1 says, "Now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And sons were born to them after the flood. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Titus. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Torgamar. The sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Dodanim." Now, what's interesting is that the Japheth and the descendants of Japheth are, better yet, Japheth is the progenitor, or he is the father of Europeans. So all of his sons, all of his grandsons, they would found what we today call Europe. They would found the area that we today call Europe. How do we know? How do we know? Well, we're going to pack that in tomorrow. We're going to unpack that in tomorrow's lesson as we continue to talk about our Bible history.